Good morning once again, and thank you for staying tuned to Sunrise at Sea right here on CTV. My name is Apollo Sarah once again, and the conversation continues on the Twitter jabs too. And today we are discussing the 2021 Corruption Perception Index. And in studio with me is Mr. Daniel Kizito, Programs Officer from Transparency International Uganda, Mr. David Kizito, Programs Officer from Transparency International Uganda, and it's a non-profit organization whose mandate is to strengthen accountability in democratic processes, enhanced citizen participation in the governance of natural resources, and promoting transparency, accountability in key society, in key socio-economic service delivery sectors. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining me on the Twitter jabs today.
Thank you.
So what we do on the Twitter jabs is we basically have trending conversations that are happening on a national scale in the country, and we bring the views of the people on the internet. And many times legislators tend to neglect the voice of the people, forgetting that they are also stakeholders in this situation. So please describe and explain to the viewer what the Corruption Perception Index is.
Briefly, to our viewers out there, the Corruption Perceptions Index is a tool that ranks countries according to the perceived levels of corruption globally. And currently we score about 180 countries across all the key continents in the world. And the CPI, while some people look at the word perception, it's more like a scientific tool.
What is the CPI?
CPI, we call it the Corruption Perceptions Index. So that tool has over 14 data sources. And these data sources are expert analysis and perceptions on the trends of economics, trends of corruption, trends of human rights and governance. So it's the tool we use to score. And every country that features on the CPI must have about 3 data sources. So that's the standard. So if you have those data sources, then you're able to be measured. So Uganda currently we have about 7. And these are sources from credible institutions. And every source that has to be quoted on the CPI has to be published every 2 years. So if there is that consistency, then this country, the report can feature, it can be used to rank or to assess a country in the CPI.
All right. Well, Uganda has ranked fairly well this year, as opposed to why are you squinting your eyes?
No, depending on the trends.
Depending on the trends. Well, we are at 144th position as of 2021, and in 2020 we were at 142nd position, while in 2019 we were at the 137th position. So, how did we get here? How are we doing well?
I think 2019 we had some bits of hope, because in that year Uganda scored 28 out of 100. So we thought would come closer to maybe the global average, that is 43. But unfortunately COVID came in and all these other messes. So we backslid to a rank of 27 out of 100. And that threw us back to a position of 142. So the closer you go to 180, that means you're performing very poorly. So 2 things every Ugandan has to look out for is the score and the position, although the score is much better. You can have 92% out of 100, but then you realize you're the last, depending on how brilliant your fellow competitors are. But in our case, we are still below. We are at about 27. And this position, we've held it for the last 2 years consecutively. So we think we are backsliding instead of improving.
So why are we stagnant?
I think it's the trend of events currently, because like I said, the CPI measures according to tools and reports. So sometimes it goes beyond the normal corruption. Now we see it, the performance of the economy and what these other experts look into us. For example, the World Bank reports, what are they saying on the performance, then the economic reports, and these human rights reports. So it's a collective thing. So if you want to score better, you have to ensure that all your institutions are well aligned.
Yes.
And also there has to be collective reporting and of course coordination. And it's one thing we've been lacking in the last 2 years.
Okay. How is that so? Why are we lacking it? Could it have been because of the pandemic? Because there were numerous scandals, especially in the office of the Prime Minister, in regard to the COVID-19 relief. Could that be the case? The pandemic? Is that why we are stagnated?
Yeah, globally, not only Uganda, but if you look at this year's CPI, you realize that over 50% of countries didn't make significant improvement.
Yes.
Most of the countries retained the score and the positions, which is quite unfortunate. And we think, one, the pandemic could have been one of those.
Okay.
But then, of course, there are always other factors
that
may be behind the scenes. We've seen a lot of decline in how human rights are being upheld, not only in Uganda but in other countries. Even when you go to the developed democracies, realize there are still these hiccups that try to kind of infringe on the rights, and this collectively, there's a way it affects the performance, and of course it's reflected in the CPI at the end of the day.
Yes, well, in East Africa, Rwanda was ranked best with 53%, Tanzania with 39%, and Kenya with 30%. So how can we improve?
Yeah, so in East Africa, when you look at Rwanda, Rwanda has always been, there's a way it's challenging us.
Exactly.
It's more like that noisy neighbor. But I think Rwanda, a few things we can pick from them is their level of implementing their anti-corruption policies.
Yes.
Then also their level of reporting and also action towards the reports. And us, when we go to now the general corruption bit of it, I think sometimes we tend to massage the corruption aspect, and it demoralizes even the ordinary citizen who would have wanted to be part of the fight. And that's why Rwanda has always ranked higher in the region and followed closely by Tanzania, because Tanzania has also made significant improvements over the years. Then Kenya is trying, but then we have South Sudan, which is still
struggling.
Struggling. That would be the word.
Yes. and so is Burundi, because Burundi was also ranked very low in the region as well. So
we ranked 19 out of 100.
Yes. That is really low.
Yeah, it is.
And there's also Equatorial Guinea. And all these countries that are ranking really low are having some sort of political instabilities or civil wars. Could that be the biggest factor in why they're ranking low?
Yeah, because mainly when you look at democracy, governance, human rights, those issues move hand in hand.
Yes.
So in countries where there is poor democracy, of course, we've seen them ranking poorly. South Sudan, Syria, Yemen, all these countries have been struggling. Then in poor democracies, of course, that's where most of our African countries, sub-Saharan countries rank. So realize that still our score has always been very poor.
Yes.
So there is a correlation between the two. Where one is poor, of course, there will be more tendencies of corruption. And of course, it goes to the performance of systems, even the economic performance, the rights of citizens, to participate. All these are infringed, and it contributes to corruption.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, countries in Europe such as Denmark, Finland, New Zealand are ranking really highly with about 88%.
Yes.
What can we learn from them? We still have a long way to go.
There is, but it can never be late. One, like we said in one of our recommendations, we want to strengthen the anti-corruption institutions to perform on their mandate. We want to see them more independent so that they can effectively perform, but also the funding to these agencies so they can ably, investigate and perhaps prosecute cases. But also, we want to see more into reporting, of course, and other things. Because when you look at these countries, their democracies, their performance, their reporting, their participation of citizens in all this, they have that informed citizenry. There is more of the respect of the rights of the people. And where there is that respect, of course, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, you'll see more less tendencies of corruption.
Yes.
But then the corruption shifts to the private sector.
Yes.
So for them, at least they struggle with private sector, but at least in public sector corruption, it's a bit limited.
And where do we struggle the most here in Uganda? Is it in the government, public sector, or is it in the private sector?
Uganda, we are still in both. Actually, it's worse in the private sector.
Oh, wow.
Although, you know, we are in a free market economy, demand and supply, and that brings in competition. But when you come to public sector, that's where our money goes. That's where we pay the taxes. And that's why we have that right to hold our government accountable. So that's where we think we should put more effort for now, and perhaps we can move into the private sector later.
So lastly, before I let you go, how can we as citizens, you know, play our role and play a part in the fight against corruption, as opposed to just leaving it to government institutions, say AntiCorruption or the Inspectorate of Government, instead of leaving it to them? How else can we as citizens help? Because you did say for countries in Europe like Denmark and New Zealand and Switzerland, it's the citizen is well versed and informed and educated about their rights. They know their rights, they know how to implement them, and their governments also respect those rights. So how can we as citizens here in Uganda, you know, help in the fight?
I think Uganda, one, we have this way of treating the corrupt. For example, when you look at our generous politicians, I'll say, we always tend to call them generous.
Yes.
But we don't take time to know where these monies are coming from. And there is that way of gratifying the corrupt. You know, we think that should stop. But also we think there should be more reporting of corruption tendencies. And there is a move, the campaign by the IG, Ms. Bet Kamya, the lifestyle audit campaign. And we think still this information will have to come from the citizens. So we believe citizens should provide more information to the anti-corruption agencies, but also do more reporting into corruption. We've put in place toll-free lines, we've put in place several reporting mechanisms, but sometimes these channels are not being used. And we think citizens should be proactive in using these channels, but also using the existing policies and legal frameworks to report on corruption. For example, we have the Whistleblowers Act. It gives you the freedoms to report. We have access to Information Act, so that before you report, at least you get some bit of evidence, so that it doesn't become mere allegations. And also, we believe we as stakeholders, we should also empower citizens to know their rights and mandates, so that, you know, perhaps they can ably now come and perform on their mandates.
You see, there's a problem with our education sector, is because children are not taught their rights in school. And you find a lot of citizens say, oh, I have a right to freedom, or I have a right to movement or assembly or freedom of speech. And they don't even understand how you can work within that freedom, that right of yours, because they say, oh, I can say anything, and then go on to insult people, to make derogatory statements about people that are untrue. So my question today would be, where can the citizen find their rights, the constitution on their rights? Because some people don't even know where to look.
Yeah, I think one of our key areas of weakness was we failed to translate most of these key instruments and tools to understandable languages. And that's a weakness. If you want people to participate, of course, they have to understand the process so that they are part of it. And that has been a weak point. But I remember back in the days, they used to teach us about rights. And these used to be themes in schools and other institutions of learning on mainly rights. And in this year's theme, corruption and human rights, it has really exposed the fact that these two are inseparable.
Yes,
and
that
if you
is
want,
the theme for the corruption perception index.
Yes, it's corruption and human rights. And we believe if you want, you know, your anti-corruption engagements to yield, of course you have to respect the rights of citizens. And we are seeing the tendency of citizens also now coming out to be, I think they're either frustrated or disappointed, or we've become now cowards, that even when we know our rights, we won't exercise them.
Yes.
We take the back seat. And there are many, I believe most of the citizens know their rights, although they may not know that this is a right to, either a right to speech, freedom of speech, and this. And sometimes I think we tend to go over the board.
Yes.
You over-exercise your rights to the extremes.
Yes.
And I think that's one of those missing links.
All right. And lastly, before I let you go,
yes.
The Uganda Law Society Association is pushing the motion to have the Anti-Corruption State House Committee abolished, the one led by Kano Nakalema. Do you think that that is one way to do it? Because they say that they are not doing anything about corruption in the country. So do you think that is one way that we can help fight corruption in the country as citizens?
I believe abolishing the anti-corruption unit won't
in your
solve,
opinion,
in my opinion, yes. It won't solve anything.
Okay.
And you know, the president has the mandate to establish some of these units.
Yes.
As per the need could be. And for the past few years, since 2019 to this year, you've realized a few milestones. And one of the key aspects about fighting corruption is citizens want to believe in something.
Yes.
They want to see some bit of action. And that's the score that the unit had given us. You know, when a case is reported on and there's quick action, like you see Nabanja goes, and then she commands that let these blankets be taken back immediately, so that your investigations can come later. One of our recommendations initially were wanted to see some bit of non-conviction based recoveries, so that when you have such a building, they just call you to explain the source. They attach the building and they call upon you to explain the source of funds towards this building. You know, that quick action, so that when you fail to explain, at least the building will be taken by government. Because that brings in quick action.
Yes.
But when I report a case and it takes about 5 years without action, of course it kind of demoralizes me. And that's the gap that the unit had tried to cover up. Because, you know, we have bureaucracy in government, you report to IG, you report to PPDA, PPDA will investigate, and in some of the cases, they won't have money to investigate.
Yes.
And I think, in my opinion, it won't be a good move. As anti-corruption actors, we think we need more stakeholders in the struggle. And the more we are, I think the more we shall achieve.
Yes.
The only problem with more government agencies fighting corruption, one, it breeds issues of poor coordination, because we have so many actors, and you know, sometimes your mandates tend to be dissolved within.
And it also just delays the whole resolution process.
Yeah, it delays, but also the resources that would have been channeled to one institution to ably fight a problem, they are now scattered to different institutions to undertake maybe some insignificant expenditures that won't solve the problem. So I think that's why some, you know, partners wish that some of these institutions are abolished. But in our opinion, I think it would be better to merge them rather than abolishing them, so that the unit is just part of the greater institution.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, David, for joining me on the Twitter Jabs today. And that is all I had for you on this second part of the Twitter Jabs. But stay tuned, because coming up is our wellness, beauty, and lifestyle segment. And we have something cooking in the kitchen. You won't want to miss that. Stay tuned to Sunrise at Sea, and don't blink.